Hello students, I am Raghvendra Kumar Singh, faculty of US Academy and Institute. Today we will discuss class 9th history's third chapter, Nazism and the rise of Hitler. In this chapter we will discuss about Nazism and the rise of Hitler and the politics of Nazism, the children's and politics on women in Nazi Germany, schools and concentration camp, the fact related to the Nazism and how they denied various minorities a right to live, anti-Jewish feeling, battled against democracy and socialism. In May 1945, Germans surrendered to the Allies. Allies means the Allied power were initially led by the UK and France in 1945. In 1941, they were joined by the USSR and USA. They fought against the Axis powers, namely Germany, Italy, and Japan. Propaganda minister of Hitler, Goebbels, and his entire family committed suicide in his Berlin bunker in April. At the end of the war, an international military tribunal at Nuremberg was set up to prosecute Nazi war criminals for crimes against peace, for war crimes and crimes against humanity. Under the shadow of Second World War, Germany waged a genocidal war which resulted in mass number of murders of selected groups of innocent civilians of Europe, including 6 million Jews, 2 lakh Gypsies, 1 million Polish civilians, 70,000 Germans, etc. Genocide, killing on large scale, leading to destruction of a large section of peoples. Now, the birth of Weimar Republic. In the early years of the 20th century, Germany fought the First World War, 1914 to 1918, alongside the Austrian Empire and against the Allies, England, France, and Russia. All resources of Europe were drained and out because of the war. Germany occupied France and Belgium. But unfortunately, Allies strengthened by the US entry in 1917, won defeating Germany and the Central Power in November 1918. At Weimar, the National Assembly met and established a democratic constitution with a federal structure. In the German parliament, deputies were elected on the basis of equal and universal votes cast by all adults, including women. Germany lost its overseas colonies. The war guilt clause held Germany responsible for the war and damages the Allied countries suffered. The Allied armies occupied Rhineland in the 1920s. Now the effect of wars. The entire continent were devastated by the war, but psychologically and financially, the war of guilt and national humiliation was carried by the Republic and was financially crippled by being forced to pay compensation. Socialists, Catholics, and Democrats supported the Weimar Republic, and they were mockingly called the November criminals. The First World War left on deep imprint on European society and polity. Soldiers are placed above civilians, but unfortunately, soldiers lived in miserable life. Democracy was a young and fragile idea which could not survive the instability of interwar Europe. Now, the political radicalism and economical crisis. The Weimar Republic birth coincided with the revolutionary uprising of the Spartacist League on the pattern of the Bolshevik Revolution in Russia. They crushed the uprising with the help of war veteran organization called Free Corps. Communists and socialists became enemies. Political radicalization highlighted by the economical crisis of 1923. Germany refused to pay, and the French occupied its leading industrial area, rude to claim their coal. The image of Germans carrying cartloads of currency notes to buy a loaf of bread was widely published, evoking worldwide sympathy. This crisis came to be known as hyperinflation, a situation when prices rise phenomenally high. Now, the year of depression. The year between 1924 and 1928 saw some stability. The support of short-term loans was withdrawn when the Wall Street Exchange crashed in 1929. Great economic depression started, and over the next 3 years, between 1929 and 1932, the national income of the USA fell by half. The economy of Germany was the worst hit. Workers became jobless and went on the street with placards saying, "Willing to do any work." Youth indulged themselves in criminal activities. The middle class and small businessmen were filled with the fear of proletariation, anxiety of being reduced to be the rank of the working class, or unemployment. Politically, also the Weimar Republic was fragile. The Weimar Constitution, due to some inherent defect, made it unstable and vulnerable to dictatorship. One inherent defect was proportional representation. Another defect was Article 48, which gave the president the powers to impose emergency, suspend civil rights, and rule by decree. Now, Hitler rise to power. Hitler rose to power. He was born in 1889 in Austria and spent his youth in poverty. In the First World War, he enrolled for the army, acted as a messenger in the front, became a corporal, and earned medals for bravery. Hitler joined a small group called the German Worker Party in 1919. he took over the organization and renamed it the National Socialist German Workers' Party, which later became to be known as the Nazi Party. In 1923, he planned to seize control of Bavaria, march to Berlin, and capture powers. During the Great Depression, Nazism became a mass movement. After 1929, banks collapsed, businesses shut down, workers lost their jobs, and the middle class were threatened with destitution. In such a situation, Nazi propaganda stirred hopes of a better future. Hitler was a powerful speaker, and his words moved people. In his speech, he promised to build a strong nation, undo the justice of the Versailles. Treaty and restores the dignity of the German peoples. He also promised employment for those looking for work and a secure future for the youth. He promised to weed out all foreign influence and resist all foreign conspiracies against Germany. Hitler started following a new style of politics, and his followers held big rallies and public meetings to demonstrate support. According to the Nazi propaganda, Hitler was called a Messiah, a savior, as someone who had arrived to deliver people for their distress. Now, the destruction of democracy. President Hindenburg offered the chancellorship on 30th January 1933, the highest position in the cabinet of ministers, to Hitler. The fire decree of 28 February 1933 suspended civic rights like freedom of speech, press, and assembly that had been guaranteed by the Weimar Constitution. On 3rd March 1933, the famous Enabling Act was passed, which established dictatorship in Germany. The state took control over the economy, media, army, and judiciary. Apart from the already existing regular police in green uniform and the SA or the storm troopers, Cs including the Gestapo, Secret State Police, the SS, the Protection Squad, and Criminal Police and the Security Services SD. Reconstruction. Economic recovery was assigned to the economist Hazalmer Skach by Hitler, who aimed at full production and full employment through a state-funded work creation program. This project produced the famous German superhighway and the people's car, the Volkswagen. Hitler ruled out the League of Nations in 1933, reoccupied the Rhineland in 1936, and integrated Austria and Germany in 1938 under the slogan "One People, One Empire, and One Leader." Scott advised Hitler against investing hugely in rearmament as the state still ran on deficit financing. Now the Nazi worldview. Nazis were linked to a system of belief and a set of practices. According to their ideology, there were no equality between peoples, but only a racial hierarchies, racism of Hitler borrowed from thinkers like Charles Darwin and Herbert Spencer. The argument of Nazi was simple. The strongest race would survive and the weak ones would perish. The Aryan race was the finest who retained its purity, became stronger and dominated the world. The other aspects of Hitler's ideology related to the geopolitical concept of Lebensraum or living space. Hitler intended to extend German boundaries by moving eastward to concentrate all Germans geographically in one place. Now the establishment of the real state. Nazis came into power and quickly began to implement their dreams of creating an exclusive racial community of pure German. They wanted a society of pure and healthy Nordic Aryans under the euthanasia program. Helmut's father had condemned to death many Germans who were considered mentally or physically unfit. Germany occupied Poland and part of Russia, captured civilians and forced them to work as slave labor. Jews renamed the worst suffer in Nazi Germany. Hitler hated Jews based on pseudo-scientific theories of race. From 1933 to 1938, the Nazis terrorized, pauperized, and segregated the Jews, compelling them to leave the country. Now, the racial utopia. Genocide and war became two sides of the same coin. Poland was divided and much of northwest Poland was annexed to Germany. Peoples of Poland were forced to leave their homes and properties. Members of the Polish intelligentsia were murdered in large number. Polish children who looked like Aryans were forcibly snatched from the mother and examined by race experts. Youth in Nazi army. Hitler was interested in the youth of the country. The schools were cleansed and purified. Germans and Jews were not allowed to sit or play together. In the 1940s, Jews were taken to the gas chambers. Introduction of racial science to justify Nazi idea of race. Children were taught to be loyal and submissive, hate Jews and worship Hitler. Youth organizations were responsible for educating German youth in the spirit of National Socialism. At the age of 14, boys had to join the Nazi youth organization where they were taught to worship war, glorify aggression and violence, condemn democracy and hate Jews, communities, gypsies and all those categorized as undesirable. Later, they joined the labor service at the age of 18 and served in the armed forces and entered on the Nazi organization. In 1922, the Youth League of the Nazis was founded. Now, the Nazi cult of motherhood. In Nazi Germany, children were told women were different from men. Both were taught to be aggressive, masculine and steel-hearted, and girls were told to become good mother, and rear poor blooded ardent children. Girls had to maintain purity of the race, distance from Jews, look after their home, and teach their children Nazi value. But all mothers were not treated equally. Honor crosses were awarded to those who encouraged women to produce more children. Bronze cross for 4 children, silver for 6, and gold for 8 or more. Women who maintained contact with Jews, Poles, and Russians were paraded through the town with shaved heads and blackened face, and placards hanging around their necks announcing, "I have sullied the honor of the nation." Now, the art of propaganda. Nazi termed mass killing as a special treatment, final solution for the Jews, euthanasia for the disabled, selection and disinfection, evacuation meant deporting peoples to gas chamber. Gas chamber was labeled as a disinfection area and looked like bathrooms equipped with fake shower head. Nazi ideas were spread through visual images, films, radio posters, catchy slogans, and leaflets. Orthodox Jews were stereotyped and marked and were referred to as vermin, rats, and pigs. The Nazis made equal effort to appeal all the different sections of the population. They sought to win their support by suggesting that Nazis alone could solve all their problems, ordinary peoples, and the crimes against humanity. People started seeing the world through Nazi eyes and spoke their Nazi language. They felt hatred and anger against Jews and genuinely believed Nazism and bring prosperity and improve general well-being. Poster Niemöller protested an uncanny silence amongst ordinary Germans against brutal and organized crime committed in the Nazi Empire. Charlotte Barrett's book called The Third Reich of Dreams described how Jews themselves began believing in the Nazi stereotypes about them. Now, knowledge about the Holocaust. The war ended and Germany was defeated, while Germans were preoccupied with their own plight. The Jews wanted the world to remember the atrocities and suffering they had endured during the Nazi killing operation, also called the Holocaust. When they lost the war, the Nazi leadership distributed petrol to its functionaries to destroy all incriminating evidences available in offices.